I was what they call a regular casual machine minder working in Fleet Street. I started in Fleet Street in 1980 and I ran the presses. I worked on predominantly the Sun. There's the old adage that is often quoted, you find a job you love and you never do a day's work in your life. Well, that was working in Fleet Street. The conditions we worked in were appalling. It was filthy, it was sub-basement, there was little or no extraction, it was noisy, there was ink fly, there was paper dust, there was no facilities for cleaning yourself at the end of the shift. There was you were lucky to find a sink to wash your hands in. They were just Dickensian. It was just unbelievable. But that was what bonded the people together. And we loved it. My particular union at that time was the NGA. And everybody in the NGA, whether you were a compositor, machine minder, stereotype worker, we'd all come through the apprenticeship, the hardships of the apprenticeship system, whether that was 5 or in my case 6 years. So that gave you a commonality, an identity and a belonging, which made us fairly unique, which I would pretty much guess was much the same in the mining industry and the steelworking industry. It's having that identity. And that's what sort of made us feel, if you like, a wee bit special. So the carrot that was hung out to the young lads who were coming into Fleet Street was that in 1986, we were all going to be transferring to Fleet Street, from Fleet Street to Wapping, into this new printing plant where we're going to be end up having the best pay and the best working conditions and the best pension. I was at home. It was my night out. So I wasn't even in work. And a very dear friend of mine who was on shift that night, called Peter Davis, who was the NGA rep in the office, phoned me up about 6:30 and he said, do us a favour, Paul, would you mind coming in? He said, something doesn't feel right. So I was living in Croydon at the time, so I wasn't far away. So it took me about half an hour. It was just Sunday night. So I scooted up the road, got into work, sitting in the office. Everything that could be done to prepare the presses for a night's run had been completed. The paper was in the presses, the folders had been set, what printing plates were around the presses had been put on the presses. Everything was done. So there was no mass walkout in protest or anything like that. And round about 7:30, around about 7:30, 8 o'clock, a load of coppers have come charging in and forced us off the premises. All that had happened was that afternoon the compositors had called an emergency meeting. That's all that had happened. But other than that, everything else was done according to the book. So we were pushed out of work and locked out. So obviously there was an awful lot of shock. Because really it was absolutely, totally and utterly out of the blue. Nobody knew it was going to happen. There was no benefits other than what we were getting from the union and from other support from other trade unions. And I say, for me, the dispute effectively lasted 13 months. On the days that I managed to find a bit of work to do, when I finished that work, I went on the picket line. So that was my life, effectively, for 13 months. Or, yeah, our life for 13 months. And then, and it impacts not only on your partners, it impacts on the children. My children were vilified at school by their head teacher. They were called out, you know, at assemblies. These are the sort of things that go on. And you never knew when you were going to turn up to do a picket whether you were going to get home that night. There could be quite a small picket on, but you could have a cohort of policemen who are just thugs, and you get a beating. They push you all over the shop. A comment that was regularly made by the police on the picket line was, "We aren't here to uphold the law, we are the law."